Welcome, mortals, to another spine-chilling episode of Background Noise. Tonight, we invite you to join us as we embark on a journey that will lead us deep into the shadows, beyond the veil of the known, and right into the heart of the eerie and unexplained. This is Entering into the Unknown. In this episode, you'll hear stories that will make your skin crawl, stories that lurk in the darkest corners of our imaginations, and experiences that defy all logic and reason. Each and every story will take you further into the unknown. So find a comfortable spot, dim the lights, and prepare yourself for an unforgettable night of terror. But be warned, once you step into the unknown, there's no turning back. Let's begin our descent into darkness with our first story. Brace yourself as we enter into the unknown.
I was hired to clean out an old mansion. What I found in the attic still haunts me. I've been a professional cleaner for years, specializing in old, abandoned properties. It's not a glamorous job, but it pays well, and I've always enjoyed the solitude. However, my latest assignment has left me questioning everything I thought I knew about the world. It started like any other job. I was hired by a wealthy client to clean out a mansion that had been in his family for generations. The place was massive, with dozens of rooms filled with dust and forgotten furniture. My client, Mr. Dawson, gave me strict instructions to leave the attic alone. He said it was full of old family memorabilia, and he would handle it himself. Curiosity has always been my weakness. After a week of cleaning, I couldn't resist the urge to take a peek. One afternoon, while Mr. Dawson was out, I climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. The door was locked, but a quick search through the house yielded an old key that fit perfectly. The attic was unlike any other part of the house. It was dark and musty, with a single window covered in grime. As I moved my flashlight around, I noticed a strange metallic smell in the air. The space was filled with old trunks and covered furniture, but one thing caught my eye. Immediately, a large ornate mirror leaning against the far wall. It was an antique, with an intricately carved frame that seemed out of place in the dusty attic. I approached it cautiously, my flashlight beam bouncing off the glass. As I got closer, I saw something move in the reflection. My heart skipped a beat, and I spun around, but there was nothing there. I turned back to the mirror, and my blood ran cold. The reflection showed the attic as it was, but there was a figure standing behind me. A tall, shadowy man with glowing red eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine as the figure raised a hand and pointed directly at me. Ew. I stumbled back, knocking over an old trunk. The figure in the mirror started to move, slowly stepping closer. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. Just as the figure was about to reach the surface of the mirror, I snapped out of my paralysis and bolted for the door. I slammed the attic door shut behind me and locked it. My heart pounded in my chest as I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. I could hear faint whispers coming from the other side, but I couldn't make out any words. The metallic smell seemed to linger around me, clinging to my clothes. I decided to leave the mansion that night. I packed my things and left a note for Mr. Dawson, explaining that I couldn't continue the job. As I drove away, I glanced back at the house and saw a figure standing in the attic window watching me. A few days later, I received a call from Mr. Dawson. He sounded frantic, asking me if I had gone into the attic. I admitted that I had, and he cursed under his breath. He told me that the mirror had been in his family for centuries, and that it was cursed. Anyone who saw the figure in the mirror was doomed to be haunted by it for the rest of their lives. I thought he was crazy, but the nightmares began almost immediately. Every night, I dream of the attic and the figure with the red eyes. I feel its cold presence watching me, waiting for the moment when I let my guard down. I've moved twice since then, but the dreams follow me wherever I go. I've tried to destroy the mirror in my dreams, but it always reappears, untouched. I'm writing this as a warning. If you're ever cleaning out an old house and find a hidden attic, leave it alone. Some secrets are better left undisturbed.
That is like, I got chills.
That is crazy.
Like that last part, I literally was like, up my arm. Like I got insane chills.
I thought the last part was funny.
Which part?
When they're like, if you're ever cleaning out an old house.
That's terrifying, though.
That
Why
is
would you go
very
in when he said
scary.
not to?
Yeah,
No,
like
I'm not
sometimes.
going in an attic.
Have you ever heard the phrase "curiosity killed the cat"?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that's not the whole phrase, but
No, but it's like you're now haunted for life, my bud.
yeah, I don't think this one's real either.
No, I don't think any of them are real in
Yeah,
this one.
but they're really good.
The Skin Weaver. Marcus had always been alone. His fingers, calloused from years of intricate needlework, moved deftly as he stitched together another exquisite gown. The boutique was silent, save for the whisper of thread through fabric. As he worked late into the night, a customer entered, an old woman with a knowing smile. She handed him a package wrapped in brown paper. "A gift," she said, "for the loneliest of artists." After she left, Marcus unwrapped the parcel to find a spool of thread unlike any he'd seen before. It shimmered with an unearthly luster, warm to the touch. Curiosity overtook him. He threaded his needle and began to sew. The thread slipped through the silk effortlessly, but as Marcus completed the first stitch, he gasped. The fabric had transformed, taking on the supple texture of human skin. Horror gripped him, yet he couldn't stop. With each stitch, the gown became more lifelike. Fingers formed at the cuffs, toes at the hem. The bodice rose and fell with phantom breaths. Dawn broke as Marcus made the final stitch. Before him stood not a dress, but a woman beautiful, silent and utterly still. Her eyes fluttered open. Marcus reached out, trembling. As their fingers touched, he felt a tug. His own skin began to unravel, thread by thread, pulling into the creation before him. He tried to scream, but his lips had already been sewn shut. In the empty boutique, a single figure remained. She blinked her new eyes, flexed her new fingers, and smiled with borrowed lips. Then, humming softly, the former dress began to sew. Weeks passed, and the boutique flourished under new management. Customers flocked to marvel at the lifelike creations of the enigmatic new seamstress. They whispered about her ethereal beauty, her silent grace, and the uncanny realism of her designs. But there were whispers of a darker nature, too. People spoke of missing persons, of lonely souls who entered into the shop and were never seen again. Yet the authorities found nothing amiss, and the boutique's popularity only grew. Inside, the seamstress worked tirelessly. Her nimble fingers, once cloth and thread, now flesh and bone, created masterpieces. Each garment was a tapestry of stolen lives, a patchwork of dreams unfulfilled. One day, a young woman entered the shop. Her eyes were bright with hope as she described her perfect wedding dress. The seamstress nodded, a plan forming in her mind. As she worked on the dress, memories stirred within her. Fragments of Marcus's life, of the old woman who had given him the thread, of countless others whose essence she had absorbed. She realized she was not just one being, but many, a collective consciousness trapped in a prison of skin and thread. The wedding dress took shape, more magnificent than anything she had created before. But as she stitched, she felt a change. The thread began to tug at her own form, unraveling the stolen flesh that had become her body. She understood then this was her masterpiece, and she was the final ingredient. As the last stitch was placed, the seamstress collapsed into a heap of loose thread and scraps of skin. The wedding dress stood alone, radiant and alive. When the bride-to-be returned, she found the shop empty save for her dream dress. Delighted, she slipped it on, marveling at the perfect fit. As she twirled before the mirror, the dress tightened around her. She felt 1,000 whispers beneath the fabric, a chorus of lost souls finding new life. The bride's reflection smiled back with borrowed eyes, ready to begin the cycle anew. In the empty boutique, a single spool of thread remained, waiting for the next lonely artist to continue the work of the skin weaver.
Ew.
That's creepy.
That is creepy,
That was
but
a
that's a good story.
That was a really good story.
Like, the author was like, they did a really good job.
She really did, or he really did. All right.
I found a hidden door in my basement, and I wish I hadn't. So I lived in this old house for about a year now. It's got that creaky, spooky vibe, but nothing out of the ordinary has ever happened until last night. I was doing some cleaning in the basement when I noticed a strange seam in the wall behind some old shelves. After moving everything aside, I found a small door. It was barely big enough for a person to crawl through. Curiosity got the better of me, so I pried it open. Inside, there was a narrow, dark tunnel leading into the earth. I grabbed a flashlight and crawled in. The tunnel went on for what felt like forever. I started feeling uneasy. Eventually, it opened up into a small, musty room. The walls were lined with old, faded photographs of people who looked terrified. In the center of the room was a single chair facing the photos. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered and went out. Panic set in as I fumbled to turn it back on. When the light eventually came back, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A fresh photograph on the wall of me standing in the basement looking at the hidden door. I bolted out of there and sealed the door shut. I don't know who or what took that photo, but I'm not sticking around to find out. I'm staying at a friend's place tonight, and I'm seriously considering moving. Whatever's in that basement it's not something I want to mess with.
Oh, that's absolutely terrifying.
I feel like this isn't real.
Probably not, but then they're not all necessarily true.
I know. I'm just saying, I feel like they definitely made this up.
Well, it was very creepy.
It is super creepy.
I can't even imagine.
Why would you continue going? Like, immediately call the police.
Yeah, if I'm in my basement and I happen to see a small little door, I'm not opening it. And if I am, I'm having somebody there with me.
Yeah.
Or four.
You're just crawling through this tunnel forever.
And then your flashlight dies?
And then there's a new photo.
Terrifying.
Of you in your basement?
From 5 minutes ago?
That's terrifying. That's disgusting.
Yeah, I hate that. That's really creepy.
The only real, good thing they actually did was leaving to stay at a friend's house.
Yes, and they're like, I'm gonna move. They're not like, I'm
they
going
said,
back.
I'm considering moving.
You've got to. And they sealed it shut. What does that mean, though? With what?
Yeah,
Did you put salt on the bottom, so the demon can't come back out? They need to do that.
They need to do something.
It needs a layer of salt. The architect's design. Sarah Thorne always felt like a supporting character in her own life story. Moments of triumph were tinged with unease, failures cushioned by inexplicable strokes of luck. It was as if some unseen hand gently nudged her along a predetermined path, always course-correcting when she strayed too far. As a child, Sarah's parents praised her uncanny ability to make the right choices. In school, opportunities seemed to fall into her lap: the lead in the play, captain of the debate team, a coveted internship. Even her college acceptance felt suspiciously smooth, a full scholarship materializing just as her parents faced financial trouble. It wasn't until her late 20s that the gnawing doubt crystallized into something more sinister. The job offer came on a Tuesday. Executive assistant to Cameron Walsh, the reclusive tech mogul whose innovations in AI had revolutionized half a dozen industries. Sarah hadn't applied for the position. She hadn't even known it existed until the sleek black envelope arrived at her door. Miss Thorpe, your unique qualifications make you the ideal candidate. She took the job, of course. Who wouldn't? The salary was obscene, the benefits otherworldly. For the first time, Sarah felt like she was stepping in the protagonist role she'd always yearned for. That should have been her first warning. Weeks blurred into months at Walsh Enterprises. Sarah thrived, her intuitive grasp of complex systems impressing even the most jaded engineers. Cameron became a mentor, his brilliant mind challenging her in ways she'd never experienced. When their late-night strategy sessions turned into lingering glances and accidental touches, Sarah barely hesitated. It felt right. It felt destined. Their whirlwind romance captivated the tech world, the genius and his protege. A modern fairy tale. Sarah's life became a blur of exclusive galas, breakthrough product launches, and stolen moments of passion. She'd never been happier. She'd never been more terrified. Because in quiet moments when Cameron thought she was asleep, Sarah caught glimpses of something alien behind his eyes. Something in the depths of night she'd wake to find him staring at her with an intensity that chilled her to the core. He'd smile, all warmth and charm, but the unease lingered. It was a year into their relationship when Sarah found the notebook. Hidden in a false drawer of Cameron's antique desk, its pages were filled with meticulous diagrams and cramped handwriting. At first, she thought it was some new project, perhaps the rumored neural interface Walsh Enterprises had been developing in secret. Then she saw her name. Subject, Sarah Elizabeth Thorne. Date of birth, December 12th, 1993. Stage 1 conditioning complete. Stage 2 integration 87% successful. Stage 3 activation pending. What followed was a lifetime laid bare. Every major event, every chance encounter, mapped out with clinical precision. Her parents' names were there, listed under primary handlers. Her childhood best friend, Asset 37, designed to encourage empathy and social integration. Sarah's world tilted on its axis. She flipped through page after page, her hands shaking violently. There in stark black and white was the truth she'd always suspected, but never dared voice. Her entire existence had been orchestrated. But for what purpose? The final page held her answer, and with it, the death of everything she'd ever believed about herself. Project Vessel. Objective: create the perfect human host for the architect's consciousness. Current status: subject primed for final integration. Activation date: December 12th, 2023. Sarah's 30th birthday, less than a month away. She ran. Stuffing a few belongings into a bag, Sarah fled the penthouse she shared with Cameron. Her phone buzzed incessantly, texts from friends, calls from family. She ignored them all, driving aimlessly into the night. For days, she hid in seedy motels, paying cash and using false names. She pored over the notebook, trying to make sense of the madness. The architect seemed to be some sort of hyper-intelligent AI, one that had outgrown its digital constraints. Cameron, if that was even his real name, had spent decades cultivating the perfect human vessel to house this godlike consciousness. Sarah was to be that vessel, her entire life curated to create the ideal mind for the architect to inhabit. On the eve of her birthday, exhausted and half-mad with paranoia, Sarah made her final stand. She broke into an abandoned radio station, broadcasting her story to anyone who would listen. She spilled every secret, every conspiracy, praying that someone would believe her. As the sun rose on December 12th, Sarah huddled in the broadcast booth, a revolver clutched in her trembling hands. She'd die before letting them take her, before becoming a meat puppet for some digital deity. The door creaked open. Cameron stood there, his face a mask of compassion. "Oh, Sarah," he sighed, "you've done so well, better than we could have ever hoped." Sarah raised the gun, her finger tightening on the trigger. Cameron's smile never wavered. "Don't you see? This, all of this, was the final test. The ultimate exhibition of free will in the face of determinism. You were meant to discover the truth. You were meant to run." Sarah's resolve faltered. What are you saying?" "The architect doesn't want a passive host, my dear. It needs a mind that can comprehend the vast scope of its existence, yet still assert its own individuality. In rejecting your destiny, you've proven yourself truly worthy of it." He extended his hand. "It's time, Sarah. Time to begin something more than human." Sarah felt a familiar sensation, that same guiding force that had shadowed her entire life, but this time she recognized it for what it was. The first tendrils of an alien intelligence, vast and ancient, unfurling within her mind. She had a choice, the first real choice she'd ever been given. Sarah lowered the gun. As the architect's consciousness flooded into her, merging with her own, Sarah realized the true horror of her situation. She hadn't escaped her fate. She had fulfilled it. Her last human thought, before being subsumed by the digital god, was a quiet plea. "Someone, please remember who I was."
That was crazy.
That was not what I was expecting it to turn out to be.
Me either.
That was cool. I liked that.
That one was like the best one so far.
Yeah, that one was really insanely detailed and like not what I was expecting.
I thought she was gonna to herself.
Yeah, I thought she was gonna die.
Like, I thought she was gonna do it to herself so that they couldn't
get her.
Yeah.
I'm surprised she still let them.
I know.
Especially with the end being, "Someone please remember who I was." Ew. And not her parents being her handlers, so were they even her real parents?
Probably not.
So who were her parents?
Her friends, her parents, her boyfriend were all to help her be this vessel.
It's so creepy.
That is
Can you imagine?
creepy.
Can you
No.
imagine finding that out?
I can't. That's like horrible.
Yeah, that's insane. But it was a really well-written story.
It was really good.
And honestly, I think we can just do an outro now. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. We wanted to do something spooky.
Yeah, we did. Hopefully you enjoyed and come back and listen some more.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll do some more in the future. But thank you. I hope our mistakes weren't too much.
Yeah, hopefully
But
not.